Hello out there, all you wonderful people. This is Andre, the Game Idea Guy. Thank you once again for giving me your time and your ear listening to another Gamer's Thoughts discussion. And this time I'm going to be talking about something that I don't think too many people actually talk about, honestly. And it's because a lot of us accept when we hear, oh, well, this just can't be done. Because, hey, they're the company, they should know. Now, I've stopped just agreeing with that line of reasoning, because there is no reason behind it. It's just a statement made to avoid questions. And for those of us who know, when someone tries to make a statement to avoid questions, they are either one, hiding something, or two, they really don't know what they're talking about. And the majority of the time when we hear anything come out of a company, it's usually from a PR person, so I wouldn't expect them to have the technical knowledge, to be fully honest. Not saying that they can't, but it's not likely if they're there to, make the company look good or share information. Usually they would not know the in-depth ins and outs of hardware, so I just wouldn't expect them to. But we often hear, well, game A can't be run on console B, and that's just that. Now, there are tons of logical reasons, and I will get them all out the way. One, they didn't pay for it to be made. Two, the hardware actually is incapable of running the game in its current state. Three, they don't want to. So that the last one is they just don't want to. They don't see a purpose in it. I mean, you could treat that as a separate reason, but they don't want to do it. They decided, hey, we're not putting this product on this platform. That's perfectly fine and okay to do. So here's the thing, though. Why doesn't anyone ever question if well, let me back up a little bit. Now, if I were talking to, if I had a chance to talk to any developers and they say, hey, my game can't be run on this platform, my first question is going to be, well, is it because the platform can't do it, or because you don't have experience with the hardware? Because it could be number two there, that you don't have experience with the hardware. And if you don't have experience with the hardware, why are you not acquiring experience with the hardware? What challenges are stopping you from doing so? I know for indie developers, they can't develop for every platform right off the bat. But some of them do get their games around, especially after they take off. So I would just say, hey, what challenges are keeping you from getting your game on this platform? Is it because you lack a software development kit? Is it because you lack the funding to do it? Is it because you don't have the time necessarily? Sometimes they don't have the time to work on a particular platform if their stuff is taking off somewhere else. There are a multitude of reasons that are logical. But just saying the hardware can't do it, I find to be, at this point in time, an illogical statement. Because we have so many different ways to translate code from computer to computer. Yeah, it's not always going to be one-to-one, and there's going to be tweaking that needs to be involved. That's a given. But we have multiple ways to translate code. On top of that, it sounds to me more like it's a thing of incompetence at that point. Well, this team can't get this game to run on this hardware. Have you tried to see if there's another team that may be able to help you? Have you, tried spending more time getting to know what things work for translating code from one platform to the next? Because if you're just going to try to take the same code from one platform and slap it onto the other, of course it's not going to work. That's just not going to happen. But I always think, though, everybody's so wholeheartedly gung-ho behind when they hear a company say, well, it just can't run on there. Do you ever question these guys? Like, hold on, if you can't get this to run on this hardware, how did you get all these games to run on previous hardware? Because, I mean, it's not like you were working on the peak of hardware constantly, especially going back generations. Or, hey, when somebody like EA comes out and says, not EA, I got mixed up for a second. Somebody like Activision comes out and says they can't get Call of Duty to run on the Switch. But you found ways to make Call of Duty work on both the Wii and the DS. I'm sorry. Nobody's expecting you to make everything be one-to-one exactly the same. But if you got the concept working on those platforms, I don't see how it wouldn't work on another. Or like the people that make the comparison for Call of Duty on the Wii U and give that as the reason why a Call of Duty has not come out on the Switch. Do we not remember that the ports of Call of Duty that were on the Wii U were gimped versions of those games? Like, you know, not with all of the stuff that the other versions on inferior platforms had. I mean, if we're going to give reason, let's give the full context for the reason, correct? So I don't think, at least I would hope it's not a level of we don't know how to do it. Well, I mean, I would hope that if it's that they don't know how to do it, that they would at least be honest about it. Because maybe they're just not as talented as everybody thinks they are. Or maybe it's just because a lot of game engines nowadays are drag and drop, and teams don't really take the time to learn the coding processes of the engines that they use. They're just using the engine and its assets, or whatever assets they can slip into the engine, and running with it. So maybe they don't know the coding side of things in order to do a lot of the things that they would need to be able to do to make a game playable on a different platform. At least not one that can brute force it anyway. Or, and it could also be that they can't clean the code up enough or remove enough assets. And this is what happens with a lot of games as of late. That's why there's so much bloat. But if they can't get the assets and everything running the way that they want them to, then they just give up. If they can't get it working the way they want to, then they just give up. But they also aren't willing to go back and remove unnecessary stuff from their game that takes up space, causes delays, and bloats up their game, makes it harder to work with. Now, there's a guy who who's working on a Super Mario 64 hack that will run on actual N64 hardware, and he's getting it to the point where he can get the game running at 60 frames per second because he's working on coding redundancies and things like that, and editing the code in a way that it processes faster and you can still perform the same task for the N64. He's created higher resolution textures. He's done a lot of stuff to improve the coding for Super Mario 64 to go ahead and make this hack that he's working on with like a different illumination system, a lot of stuff. So, and this is a long project this guy is working on. Like, and it's amazing. If I, on the YouTube side of things, if I find I'll find the link to the channel on the YouTube side of things and post it in the description for people to find. But that proves to me that if you have someone who's good at coding and can take the time to deep dive into it, you can make huge improvements even on the game that has the file size of Super Mario 64. Where you can lighten the load that the game is bearing down on the hardware. Because that's all it comes down to, is how heavy is the load that the hardware has to bear from this game. Honestly, it's one of the reasons that The Witcher 3 runs the way it does on the Switch, and those improvements that came from The Witcher 3 on the Switch got translated to the other versions of the game, making them all better. I would think that, hey, if your team is talented enough, they can do a lot and work on what they want to work on with the resources that they have. But maybe they're not confident in themselves. Maybe they don't think they can do it. Or maybe they just don't have the programming knowledge or talent to do it. Those could also be reasons why something can't be done versus the hardware is incapable. Maybe the people are incapable. It's just food for thought. Because again, everybody just runs to, well, they said it can't be done, but why though? Why did they say it can't be done? Now, I've before talked about the other reasons, but I'm talking about the human side of things now. Why are you incapable of making this happen? Why can't your team get this to happen? Why can't your team make it work? Why is this so fundamentally difficult for you? Which are all valid questions to ask. Again, there's a number of logical reasons. Things that have nothing to do with the actual hardware of the console. That have more so to do with, well, we don't have enough money, or it's not a good enough investment for us. The investment would not be worth the money for us. Again, this is why I use Bandai Namco as an example. Because they said Dragon Ball FighterZ or Dragon Ball FighterZ could not be run on the Switch. They also said the same thing about Dragon Ball Z Kakarot. That couldn't be run on the Switch. Somehow, Switch hits certain milestones and those games find their way there. I mean, just take it for what it is. This is just me giving another potential thought to why something may not be able to be done versus just saying, well, the hardware can't do it. It's incapable. It may just be that the people who are trying to work on it are incapable versus the hardware itself. But that's it. I'm not gonna drag this one out too much more. It's just an interesting thought, and I don't mean to like throw any shade at any developers because it's not the point of this. It's just saying, hey, it doesn't make sense that certain things can't be done. We've had far inferior hardware that has done more, and it's not at that point. It's not the hardware that's causing the problem. It's the people. So, just food for thought. Thank you all for listening in. Keep your eyes and ears out for more stuff from me. And until the next time, enjoy your games. Peace out, everybody.